career. I think one of the first questions most people ask is, what the heck is asset protection and risk management? I mean, it sounds kind of cool, and it's got some big words, but what does it really mean to the average person? And so I took some time to sort of go through that and to try and describe the philosophy or the view of practitioners that deal with this, such as myself, lawyers or estate planning lawyers, or tax planners, accountants, those sorts. Asset protection and risk management is really about trying to structure your affairs or your holdings, your transactions, to better maximize your use and enjoyment, but to try to minimize liability, whatever those liabilities may be, whether they're known or unknown or what have you. When we consider assets in law, assets and property is very broad. In law, property is real property is one kind of property, so land, for example, or interest in land, known as real property, leases or licenses, those sorts of things, options to purchase, that's real property, land, treated very specially in law. And then there's personal property, which is basically everything else. So tables and chairs and cars and diamonds and gold and money and stocks and bonds and intellectual property. So all of that stuff is basically personal property. So when we talk about assets and property in a legal sense, it's a very, very broad notion. It can include rights and an ability to enforce rights or forgo rights could be something that's of value. For certain types of assets, in my view, certain assets are more risky than other types of assets. So for real estate owners or real estate investors, it's good to understand that you can see liability just from the mere ownership of the thing. Much like being a registered owner of a car and having to pay a speeding ticket no matter who is driving, the registered owner of land is responsible for many things, whether it's statutory responsibilities like municipal bylaws, or property taxes, or occupier's liability act, or the state of the land. So that notion is important to understand, that if a creditor is pursuing someone or evaluating whether to pursue them, understanding whether they own land or not might be a swaying factor, because of course lawyers like land, they can often collect against it, and it's pretty hard to hide. Asset protection, risk management also looks at taxes, estate planning, acquiring interests of property, buying, selling, co-owning, all of these types of things. Some sources of liabilities that we often think about are things like lawsuits and income tax, capital gains, relationships in our lives, debtors, creditors, co-owners, customers, suppliers, spouses, these types of things. From a tax perspective, it's important to remember capital gains can be substantial, and capital gains can include not just land, but also shares of a corporation. So if you've set up a real estate company or some form of corporate structure, and you're moving that around, selling shares to you and your spouse or to a holdco or something, that can attract capital gains. And so we want to be careful about that. So that's sort of what we're pointing towards when we get into the asset